Just spot it in your own head. Then switch it into action. Oh, but I'm not going to react. No, I'm going to accept the anger and then I'm going to let it fall through.
Correct.
Because if you let that moment pass, you'll see that the anger also passes.
Right.
Same thing happens with greed, envy, other negative emotions.
Absolutely.
The thing is, when you meditate, when you live life meditatively, mindfully, you're able to spot these emotions much more easily and switch the action, which is why you should be meditating more.
That's what my next point was when you were saying this. That was my head. You can't do it without this. So you said it already.
Yeah. I think it just gives you a perspective on your own mind. It gives you the ability to change what you're feeling in your mind.
Of course.
As a friend of mine, Om Dhumatkar, says, it's about creating distance between thought and perception.
100%.
Thought is your first negative emotion. Perception is how you're looking at that thought.
100%.
So when it comes to patience, know that you're feeling a lack of it. You got to go, I'm feeling a lack of it again. And then learn to cultivate it.
Of course.
Tell yourself that, no, wait, hold on. Contrast into this. I know that a lot of hyper rich people consult with you, billionaires and industry leaders and all that. What are their problems like? Similar to the common man's problems? Because I don't know. I mean, of course, yes, they're also human beings.
Right.
But I'd like to know the differences more than the commonalities.
Right.
Because every young person today is thinking about being a billionaire or quick money or luxury, materialism. Earlier, social status was cars and clothes. Social status now, social media numbers.
Right.
Everyone's chasing that lust.
100%.
But now go on, sir.
Yes, you kind of answered your own question by saying that billionaires are human beings too. Human beings are human beings, whether you're a billionaire or not a billionaire. So with a generation like this, I'm not too sure if I would blame them for it directly. With too much to say they are impatient.
It's the concrete jungle that's causing these things.
It's a concrete jungle of everything being like this at the, getting to you in a jiffy. That probably is also very strongly responsible for lack of patience. In fact, it's not just about the youngsters. Even if you look at the elder generation, they've lost the virtue of patience that they've had normally because they also are into this kind of a setting now. Many of them are losing it. They had it for years. But now it's all become so easy that if they don't get their pizza on time, they will yell at the waiter. They never did that before. Right? They're always okay. Hota hai late, chalta hai, So what's the way out? What's the way out of this whole thing? When they practice vulnerability to say that, I made a mistake, or I think I don't have this, or I think I lack this at this moment. I think I take responsibility for what I did or what I went through. It sets up a loop for others to be vulnerable to. So what it does is, my being vulnerable empowers somebody else to become vulnerable as well. So I feel that I did want to say this, that even in saying this, that, I don't think I have patience. So I really feel that if there be one quality that, this probably you have a million good qualities, but if there be one good quality that I would highlight as the reason for you being who you are today, it's this. The vulnerability and the humility. Because that's what becomes the catalyst to work on it. If you're in a shell thinking I'm okay and I know and I'm fine, you're not getting anywhere. But sir, good. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Learned it from Ronald.
Think about it. So when we did this, then I felt that this won't suffice. Right? This won't suffice. And like you said, therapy, that's where I got into the space as well to now come up with an app. Right? Which goes along with the book, which has to do with this, which has to do with telling people how to deal with their issues. If they don't deal with their issues, they're going to have to go to somebody when the things are very serious. But if the ajwain and honey ka nuska works, you may not need to go there. So what I want to give is the ajwain honey ka nuska, whether it's the book or through the app. So the book is Energize Your Mind, but the app is called Monkeyfy. It launches with the book on the 1st of Jan as well. And the very reason we call it Monkeyfy is because It was about monkeyifying your life without being a monk. You don't have to be a monk. Why should anybody have to be a monk?
I'd also like to highlight that this in no way is anything to do with
I want to give is the Ajwain Honey Ka Nuska. Whether it's the book or through the app. So the book is Energize Your Mind, but the app is called Monkeyify. It launches with the book on the 1st of Jan as well.
Yeah.
And the very reason we call it Monkeyify is because it was about monkeyifying your life without being a monk. You don't have to be a monk. Why should anybody have to be a monk?
I'd also like to highlight that this in no way is anything to do with clinical therapy. Like that's its
No.
own, Yeah.
Absolutely nothing to do with clinical therapy.
That has its own place in the world, its own needs.
Which is why I said this is the Dadi Nani Ka Ajwain and Honey Ka Nuska.
Yeah.
Right. And that has its own place.
Mm.
So when Ajwain doesn't work, you realize, hey man, 3 days my stomach's hurting. My Dadi told me take Ajwain with some warm water. I took it. It's been 3 days, 4 days, it's not hurting. Better I go to a doctor. Exactly the same. Exactly the same. Anything that we offer to the world in the self-help space has only that much help as much. So the book is Energize Your Mind, but the app is called Monkeyify. It launches with the book on the 1st of Jan as well.
Yeah.
And the very reason we call it Monkeyify is because it was about monkeyifying your life without being a monk. You don't have to be a monk. Why should anybody have to be a monk?
I'd also like to highlight that this in no way is anything to do with clinical therapy. Like that's its
No.
own, Yeah.
Absolutely nothing to do with clinical therapy.
That has its own place in the world, its own needs.
Which is why I said this is the Dadi Nani Ka Ajwain and Honey Ka Nuska.
Yeah.
Right. And that has its own place.
Mm.
So when Ajwain doesn't work, you realize, hey man, 3 days my stomach's hurting. My Dadi told me take Ajwain with some warm water. I took it. It's been 3 days, 4 days, it's not hurting. Better I go to a doctor. Exactly the same. Exactly the same. Anything that we offer to the world in the self-help space has only that much help as much as Ajwain and water has for a stomachache at home.
Yeah.
And then you will have to have emotions. And in my very usual self, my own style of anecdotal style of writing, my stories, I've in fact shared stories where I've become extremely vulnerable. Right. I've spoken about my own issues, which for a spiritual leader is not seen in the best light. It's not going to be seen in the best light at times.
Because it humanizes you.
It humanizes me. It brings me down from that pedestal where everybody thinks, oh, Guruji, the light of the world. You know, a Guruji is not a Messiah. I began by saying he's a human being. So I have become extremely vulnerable in the book there. And the reason I became vulnerable is to take that whole thing, the artificial aura around guruship. That no, enlightenment doesn't mean you won't feel it. Enlightenment means how pedestal where everybody thinks, oh, Guruji, the light of the world. You know, a Guruji is not a Messiah. I began by saying he's a human being. So I have become extremely vulnerable in the book there. And the reason I became vulnerable is to take that whole thing, the artificial aura around guruship. That no, enlightenment doesn't mean you won't feel it. Enlightenment means how do you deal with it? Right? So I've shared some stories which I've never told anybody in my life. There's one story in particular, nothing big, nothing very serious, but it does really kind of make me like, man, I'm telling this here. It could mean, and I wrote this in the very introduction, in the preface, that I'm saying this just so that my vulnerability empowers you to be vulnerable. If I can be vulnerable,
Sometimes you need medication.
100%.
Not all the time, but you definitely need medication sometimes. I feel we don't talk about therapy and psychology enough as a medicine-like tool for the mind and spirit.
Correct.
That's why so many people my age are actually open to it.
Right.
But people in their 40s,
Correct.
my parents' generation, the 50s and 60s, some of them even laugh upon it. and get scared when you say things like,
Yeah.
I'm going for therapy. Like when I'm telling people my age, they're like, oh, cool. When I
Yeah.
tell someone who's older, they're like, are you
क्या हो गया?
crazy?
तुमको क्या हो गया?
Yeah, like, don't go. I'm just like, hold on.
Yeah.
It's like, you need to go a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, what's this role of like
Yeah.
therapy related to?
Yeah. I think it's like this. This varieties of level to stay fit, like you rightly alluded to in your question. Entering into a very sacred space.
In your head.
In my heart, head, in my internal space, I would rather call it. Entering into a very sacred space internally. A sacred space which is aloof to everything that's happening in the outside world to me. Right. There's so much that's happening. There's ups and downs and successes and failures and love and hate and honor and dishonor. And so much is going on in the outside world. To enter into that sacred space means to be aloof from that. So the more I get to do that, even if it's for a split second, remember, Ranveer, that split second of entering into that sacred space is like thousands of years of being there. Here, a split second is a split second. In that space, a split second is a generation, is a century, is a millennium. One of the biggest problems the world has today is that people who are spiritually inclined, people who are spiritually connected, people who are spiritually disposed, are the ones who think that, well, I just need to now quit. I just need to be deeply satisfied in my spiritual connection because baki sab to maya hai. A very frequent term thrown amongst spiritual circles in the country. Maya. Maya, that which will distract you from your life's purpose. Maya, that which will pollute you, that which will corrupt your mind and your intelligence. Maya,
because your pure goal is the spiritual
pure goal
chase.
is your spiritual achievement.
Yeah,
your spiritual attainment.
Yeah, we're talking about life's purpose here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like a term that's thrown very often in spiritual discussions.